On our Advent formation series, which for those of you at the 8 o'clock noted, as Katie Beth noted, it is not yet Advent, but it kind of sort of is. So that's the gist of the sermon in a nutshell. But you have a great opportunity here to begin our season of Advent formation series, which is, as we've said, going to focus on some Christmas classics, some books and movies and stories that help draw out themes that we might say are consonant with or resonant in the story of Christmas and the birth of Christ and Epiphany and those important feasts within the church year. It's important to note, I think, whenever we're telling stories and trying to communicate deep truths, that they have multiple meanings and themes and messages associated with them. And there are other versions, essentially, of the Christ story that have emerged over time with varying degrees of actual closeness to this whole idea of the birth and the angels and the shepherds and the wise men and all that. So we're going to examine these Christmas classics, as I'll call them, not as allegories. They're not there's not some hidden thing if you play it the right way or look at it in the right light, it becomes the story of the birth of Christ. Instead, I want to sort of tease out some themes, some messages, some ideas that we can then say deepen our appreciation and understanding of that primary story, which is the story of the birth of Christ and the shepherds, the wise men, Mary, all of that, okay? There's an important distinction to make there, though. So I'm not going to show you It's a Wonderful Life and try to make an argument for why this is actually an allegory for Christ. It's not quite there. And I think that would be trying to, sort of fit the round peg in a square hole kind of thing. What I want to do is take a look at the movie, talk about the movie, and then see what it has to teach us about themes that I would call very Christian, and very Christmas Advent oriented. So we'll be doing that in a second. But first, a little bit of information about the movie. It's a Wonderful Life came out in 1946. It's based on a short story called The Greatest Gift by Philip Van Doren Stern. And he wrote this story between 1939 and 1943. Think a little bit about what's going on in the world in 1939 to 1943. Loosely, very loosely, or at least very poorly imitated on A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, which we'll talk about more specifically next week. Katie Beth will lead us into that. The story itself is just 4,100 words, just 21 pages. So it is a short story. And he could not find a publisher for it, so he sent 200 copies to some friends for Christmas, almost like a Christmas letter. He sent out, say, I wrote this thing, no one would publish it, maybe you'd like it. And a Hollywood producer got a hold of it, he was in this web, and showed it to Cary Grant, who he knew. And they, together, thought there was some merit here in this story, so they purchased the movie rights, but didn't do anything with them, and eventually sold them to Frank Capra in 1945. Capra then takes the story, adapts it somewhat, so if you read The Greatest Gift, it won't be exactly the same as It's a Wonderful Life, the movie. But Capra turns it into It's a Wonderful Life. There are issues with the writing credits when he does that, and Capra was a bit of a bullish figure, as I understand, within the Hollywood world, so he didn't really care whose toes he was stepping on. But they come up with this movie. And then Cary Grant does not take the role, obviously. As you know if you've seen it, Jimmy Stewart does. Just to note that this is Jimmy Stewart's first role after serving himself in World War II. And becomes one of his most iconic roles. Just to make clear, am I going to ruin this movie for anybody during this lecture? Has everybody seen It's a Wonderful Life? I should do a little bit of a spoiler alert here, because we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about what happens. And so if you haven't seen it, maybe you should leave. But how many times? I mean, if you've seen it less than 3 times, yeah, exactly. Interestingly, all right, so 1946, this movie comes out. The box office reception was bad. It was not a hit. It was not terribly well received, didn't even come close to breaking even. I don't know why that is, and maybe we can think about that if we have time at the end. Was it too soon? Too late? Was it too saccharine for a world still pretty beaten down? Or was it too serious from a world that wanted to escape some of the more somber elements of this film? I don't know. But it was not well received, that is clear. The critics did not like it. It was nominated for some Academy Awards, including Best Picture, but it did not win. And it stayed essentially unappreciated or underappreciated pretty much until the copyright lapsed after 30 years. And it went into the public domain, which meant it could be broadcast without licensing fees or royalty fees. And that's 30 years later in the 70s, 1976, when it gets picked up and broadcast and becomes virtually synonymous with Christmas programming. Right? So this movie, Capra even say, I didn't really think of it as a Christmas movie. It happens at Christmas, but is it a Christmas movie? It's worth a good question for us to ask. So, but then, starting in 1976, it's played pretty much every year, multiple times, multiple stations throughout the rest of the things. And it becomes known as one of the greatest films of all time. Not just because people like it, but it's on every list of best films ever made, holds the top spot for most inspirational films of all time. So it sort of moves up to sort of platinum status as a movie, as a film. But 30 years after its debut, which kind of surprised and delighted, I think, but surprised Capra and Stewart and these various other things who went on for their careers to make other movies. And all of a sudden, this little thing from their past becomes a mega hit. Fascinating project there. Why is that? I don't know. Worth thinking about, though. Now, the plot summary, Capra summarized as a good Samaritan, a good Sam, who doesn't know he's a good Sam. I think that's a simplified version of it, but it sort of gets to the heart of it. And it tells the story, as you know, of George Bailey from Bedford Falls, New York. Big dreams, big heart, a penchant for helping people, but life keeps getting in the way. And I want to note at the outset that the movie is an interesting mix of tone. There's a lot of funny parts, there's a lot of lightness, there's a lot of joy and sort of literal dancing, and yet it's edged, it's ringed by a darkness, which is this essentially suicidal moment that George Bailey finds himself in right at the beginning of the film. So to help us capture that, I just want to look just for like a minute at the opening credits sequence, which is this sort of holly jolly opening Christmas credits, but transitions very quickly into that opening scene of George on the verge of killing himself and the prayers of his family and friends sort of echoing through the air in the opening sequence. So Jamie, you want to get us going there? We'll just start towards the end of the opening credits sequence. I'm not going to watch the whole thing, but just a little bit of it, and just for a minute, and then see that transition and note the tone shift. Holly jolly Christmas here. And Santa's doing the can over here in the corner here.
He never thinks about himself, Bernard. That's why he's in trouble.
George is a good guy. Give him a break, God.
I know you, dear Lord. What to read tonight? Please, God. Something's the matter with Daddy. Please be Daddy back.
You can stop it there just to give a taste of that. You see how we've gone a very far way from the holly jolly Christmas here, right? Especially with the kid in tears praying for her father, who you're about to find out is standing on a bridge, thinking about jumping in. It's an interesting shift, right? This holiday movie starts in a very dark place, and so does Advent, when you think about it, right? The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. On them light has shined. So this mix of light and dark is essentially the crux of the movie, trying to get George to move from the present darkness that he is in to see the light that is shining all around. Interestingly, it's not some sort of new light that is being born. It's actually a recognition of the light that is already there, right, for George. It's about seeing his life for the blessing, for the wonderfulness that it is, rather than saying, I need to change my life or something. It's different message. Think again of John, the prologue. Again, light and darkness. What has come into the world in him, in Jesus, in the Word, is light. And the light was the life of all people. And the darkness does not overcome it. Jesus comes into the world does not receive him, does not recognize the blessing that he is, does not see him for the light that he is, much the way George is having trouble seeing the light of his life right now, and so is living in a land of darkness. This mix of light and dark is essential to the Advent and then Christmas, I would say, story. There is around the edges a threatening cloud that hovers. And this is a threatening cloud as we look back to the story of Herod chasing after this baby, of Mary and Joseph having to travel while pregnant, of the threats of violence and death that surround, and knowledge that we have that this birth is going to lead to an excruciating death in the crucifixion. Right? The cross is present at the manger. But so too, if we look for it, is the resurrection. And that transition, not around the darkness, but through the darkness and into this new life, this resurrected life, this renewed appreciation for life, is very much the trajectory of this film, right? So this is George's journey. And that's part of what I would call Advent's triple vision. Advent asks us to look back and forward at the same time. We look forward to Christ's second coming. We look back to the nativity, the birth of Christ, in order to say to ourselves, if he came then, he can come then. And the third aspect of that vision is teaching us to look around. So look forward, look back, look around. That is Advent's triple vision, because that is how it's trying to encourage us to reflect on our life as it is, and the way in which it does and does not reflect that coming kingdom, that coming reign of Christ. That is, to me, very much the trajectory, as I said, of this film. Another Advent theme that is part and parcel with this theme is, I would say, judgment with this film. Judgment more in the sense of assessment of one's life. There's not a sheep and a goats moment going on right now for George. Not some sort of divine judge. The divine characters are almost cartoonish in their simplicity. And there, you see them in a second, the galaxies start chatting to each other. But there are questions of how you measure a life. What makes for a meaningful and fulfilling and valuable and enjoyable life? Advent is very much trying to reorient us around that question. The last few weeks, if you've been paying attention, have focused in, and today, Katie Beth does an expert job of really highlighting that focus on the kingdom of heaven, the coming kingdom, through parables that, yes, include judgment as a big part of them, but really an assessment of how one lived. It will come suddenly, so we have to be awake, we have to be prepared, but also when it comes, the question will be what you've done with it, right? Parable of the talents last week. And more specifically, how have you fed the hungry, gave drink to the thirsty, welcomed the stranger, clothed the naked, cared for the sick, visited the imprisoned? Those actions of one's life are its constitutive parts that add up to how it is measured. And George Bailey gets high marks on that account. He's just the only one who can't see it. So it's about his awareness being brought into focus on the life that he has lived, which is very much a life in line with that sort of kingdom vision, that reign of God. At one point, Clarence says, man's life touches so many other lives. Our actions make up our life, and giving an account, or in this case, having to be shown an inverse account of what it would be like without you, helps us to see that. Advent is a critical season of reflection and maybe even repentance, right? We go to purple. It's like Lent, a time of repentance, reorientation, redirection, realignment. And this is the gift that George is given by Clarence, and it clicks into place. So judgment, assessment of one's life, another Advent theme. Also dreams. This is a season of dreams and wonder. Advent and Christmas and Epiphany all have stories of dreamers and visions. And it's a season to reflect on our dreams. And George has dreams, so we're going to watch a few minutes here as he's explaining to his dad around the dinner table what those dreams are. Jamie, do you want to jump us ahead to that one?
Why do they need gin?
Well, did I act like that when I graduated from high school? Pretty much.
His younger brother's graduation from high school.
Mother and I talked it over half the night. We had that all figured out. If you Harry will take my job with building loan, work there for 4 years, then he'll go. Pretty young for that job. Well, go younger now. You were born older, George. How's that? I said you were born older. I suppose you decided what you want to do when you get out of college. Oh, well, you know what I've always talked about, is build things, design new buildings, plan modern cities. All that stuff I just talked about. After that first million before you pay it. No, I still half that cash. Of course, it's just a hope, but you wouldn't consider coming back to the building alone, would you? Why? Well, Annie, why don't you draw up a chair that you'd be more comfortable in?
I would if I thought I had anything worth listening to.
I know it's soon to talk about it.
No, Pop, I couldn't face being cooped up for the rest of my life in a shabby little office. Pop, I didn't mean that. It's this business of nickels and dimes and spending all your life trying to figure out how to save 3 cents a length of pipe. I go crazy. I want to do something big, something important.
You know, George, I feel that in a small way we're doing something important. Satisfying a fundamental age. It's deep in the race for a man to want his own roof, walls, and fireplace. And we're helping him get those things in our shabby little office.
I know, I know that. I wish I felt it. I've been hoarding pennies like a miser here in order to... Most of my friends have already finished college. I just feel like if I didn't get away, I'd bust.
Yes. You're right, son.
You see what I mean, don't you, Bob?
This town is no place for any man unless he's willing to crawl to Potter. Now, you've got talent, son. I've seen it. You get yourself an education and get out of it.
Bob, you want a shock? I think you're a great guy. Oh, did you hear that, Annie?
I heard it about time you look at this.
There's a melancholy to this scene, right? It's exciting. He's young. He's got dreams. He's got an earnestness and excitement about what's possible. And this is very much part of his personality. He says this over and over again. He's got these dreams, big things. Want to get out of here. If I had to stay in this place, I'd bust. And yet, because the movie begins at the end, we know he ends up staying in that place, and he busts, almost. Right? So there's a question here about dreams deferred. Right? Remember Langston Hughes' phrase, what happens to a dream deferred? And he's speaking there about racially, the oppression that people experience. But there's a frustration which leads to the bridge. And as we're thinking about dreams, and we're thinking about the way in which our dreams change over life, or that the way that life changes our dreams out of necessity, Advent, I think, is also a season to reflect on our dreams for the world, for ourselves, and God's dream for the world and for ourselves. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, which we call the reign of God. That second coming when God, which we don't call, but translates more appropriately as the reign of God. When Christ is king, what would things look like? Reflecting on those dreams and how far apart, or maybe aligned, but how far apart they may be. I wonder what happens to God's dream when it is so long deferred. Perhaps a reason for some of the judgment and aggressiveness in these parables that we've been hearing. And also a time, as I said, for us to reflect not just on our life as it is, but for how we long for it to be, and see if we can bring our dreams in line a little more closely with God's dream, and ask, how are we ushering in that kingdom, that reign of God? How are we participating in it? How are we taking part in its construction? How are we preparing for the fulfillment of all that has been promised, a day when Jesus shall reign as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and life shall be on earth as it is in heaven? You hear this in Isaiah. You hear it in Revelation. You hear this in Mary's Magnificat, right? This sort of almost earthquake that comes at this time of the year, when things are righted or finally brought in line with their intended purpose and exhibiting the completeness of their possibility, their promise, so all people may share in the abundance of God's blessing. But to get there, we've got to do some work on our dreams. And George, it's sort of a tragedy, right? As you go through the first 2/3 of the movie, you see life eating away at that dream. And essentially what needs to happen is he needs to realign what that dream is. And once he does, we'll get to the end of the movie, and then it does feel like the kingdom of heaven, doesn't it? But it's different than what he wanted or thought he wanted out of life. That's a big transition that needs to happen. And a lot of it is built around judgment, dreams, and sacrifice. I don't think it's overstating it to say that George lives a sacrificial life. Not sacrificial in the grand, heroic way we think of, but precisely the opposite. It's the little sacrifices that he makes in his daily living, or the choices that he makes to help other people rather than himself, that lead to his dream being eaten away. And you sit there and you go, what a great guy. And he sits there slowly dying inside. The examples from this: saving his brother in the icy pond, loses his hearing, which prevents him from going to war, preventing Mr. Gower from poisoning someone by accident, taking over the business when his dad dies suddenly instead of going to college soon after this scene, right after this scene, right? And he makes all those choices for other people, sacrificing his own desires and dreams for that. And the biggest example, maybe I would say the biggest example of this, is his honeymoon, right? So we're going to watch that clip. Jamie, you want to go ahead and pull that up there? Pouring rain. He can't even get a sunny day for his wedding.
First Karen, now George. Annie, we're just two old maids now.
You speak for yourself, Miss B.
If either of you two see a stranger around here, it's me.
Hey, look, there's somebody driving this cab.
Bert, the cop sent us over. He said to port away to Happy Land on the Bubbles.
Oh, look at this old Bert.
By the way, where are you two going on this here now, honeymoon?
Where are we going? Look at this. There's the kitty, Ernie. Here, come on, count it, Mary.
Oh, I feel like a bootlegger's wife. Look!
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna shoot the works. A whole week in New York, a whole week in Bermuda, the highest hotels, the oldest champagne, the richest caviar, the hottest music, and the prettiest wife.
Well, that does it. Then what?
Then what, honey?
After that, who cares?
No, that doesn't
Don't look now, but there's something funny going on over there at the bank, George. I've never really seen one, but that's got all the earmarks of being a run.
Hey, Ernie, you got any money in the bank? You better hurry.
George, let's not stop. Let's go.
Uh-oh.
Please, let's not stop, George.
Back a minute. Well, hello, everybody. Miss Constant, how are you? Molly, what's the matter here? Can't you get in? What is this, Uncle Billy? A holiday? Come on in, everybody. That's right. Let's come on in. Gotcha. Now, look, why don't you all sit down? Here, there are a lot of seats over there. Just make yourselves at home. George, can I see you a minute? Why did you call?
I just did, but they said you left. This is a pickle, George. This is a pickle.
All right, now what happened? How did it start?
Well, how does a thing like this ever start? All I know is the bank called our loan.
When?
About an hour ago, I handed over all our cash.
All of it?
Every cent of it, and still was less than we owed.
Holy mackerel!
And then I got scared, George, and closed the doors.
The whole town's gone crazy.
Yeah, hello? George, it's Potter.
Hello?
George, there's a rumor around town that you closed your doors. Is that true? Oh, well, I'm very glad to hear that. George, are you all right? Do you need any police?
Police? What for?
Well, mobs get pretty ugly sometimes, you know. George, I am going all out to help in this crisis. I have just guaranteed the bank sufficient funds to meet their needs. They will close up for a week and then reopen.
Just took over the bank.
I may lose a fortune, but I am willing to guarantee your people too. Just tell them to bring their shares over here, and I will pay 50 cents on the dollar.
Oh, you never miss a trick, do you, Potter? Well, you're gonna miss this one.
If you close your doors before 6 p.m., you will never reopen.
George was a nice boy. Gosh, I wanted to be there.
Yeah. You can take this one off now. Now, just remember that this thing isn't as black as it appeared. I have some news for you, folks. I was just talking to old man Potter, and he's guaranteed cash payments to the bank. The bank's going to reopen next week.
But George, I got my money here. Did he guarantee this place?
Well, no, Charlie, I didn't even ask him. We don't need Potter over here.
I'll take mine out.
No, but you're thinking of this place all wrong, as if I had the money back in a safe. The money's not here. Well, your money's in Joe's house. That's right next to yours. And in the Kennedy house, and Mrs. Maitland's house, and 100 others. You're lending them the money to build, and then they're going to pay it back to you as best they can. Now, what are you going to do, foreclose on them?
I got $242 in here, and $242 isn't going to break anybody.
Okay, Tom. All right. Here you are. You sign this. You get your money in 60 days.
60 days?
Well, now, that's what you agreed to when you bought your shares.
Tom, did you get the money?
No, well, I did.
Old man Potter will pay 50 cents on the dollar for every share you got. Yes, cash.
Well, what do you say?
Oh, Tom, you have to stick to your original agreement. Now give us 60 days on this.
Okay, Randall.
Are you going to Potter's?
Better to get half than nothing.
Randall, wait. Now listen to me. I beg of you not to do this thing. If Potter gets a hold of this building and alone, there'll never be another decent house built in this town. He's already got charge of the bank, he's got the bus line, he's got the department stores, and now he's after us. Why? Well, it's very simple, because we're cutting in on his business, that's why. Because he wants to keep you living in his slums and paying the kind of rent he decides. Joe, you had one of those Potter houses, didn't you? Well, have you forgotten? Have you forgotten what he charged you for that broken down shack? Here, Ed, you remember last year when things weren't going so well, you couldn't make your payments? Well, you didn't lose your house, did you? You think Potter would have let you keep it? Can't you understand what's happening here? Don't you see what's happening? Potter isn't selling, Potter's buying. And why? Because we're panicky and he's not, that's why. He's picking up some bargain. Now, we can get through this thing all right. We've got to stick together, though. We've got to have faith in each other.
But my husband hasn't worked in over a year, and I need money.
How am I going to live until the bank opens?
I got doctor bills to pay. I need cash.
I can't keep my kids on faith. I've got to have...
How much do you need?
Hey! I got $2,000. Here's $2,000. This will tide us over to the bank reopens. All right, Tom, how much do you need?
$242.
No, Tom, just enough to tide you over to the bank.
I'll take $242.
There you are.
That'll close my account.
Your account's still here. That's a loan. Okay. All right, Ed.
Well, I got $300 here, George.
All right, now, Ed, what'll it take until the bank opens? What do you need?
Well, I suppose $20.
$20. Now you're talking. Thanks, Ed. That's fine. All right, now, Miss Thompson, how much do you want?
But it's your own money,
Don't
George.
mind about that. How much do you want?
I can get along with 20, all right.
$20.
And I'll sign the paper.
You don't have to sign anything. I know you pay it when you can. That's okay. All right, Miss Davis.
Could I have $17.50?
You got 50 cents. 7.
We're gonna make it, George.
6.
I'll never close this up today.
5, 4, 3, 2.
All right, Jamie, we can stop it there. That's fine. So they make it. He saves the building and loan, but he gives up his honeymoon. Mary also, you notice, has a part to play in this, and she's often one of the ones driving and encouraging his sacrifice. And they have what is beautiful but a very humble honeymoon night, if you remember the next scene, together in their ramshackle house that they spend time fixing up. Nothing like what they had planned, not the grand adventure, but if you see the number of people they have saved from predatory loans or they're losing their house and things like that, it is a sacrifice. So it makes me wonder, do our sacrifices define us more than our successes in life? Is what we give up in the name of helping others more definitive for our life than the things we accomplish? I think it's worth wondering. Those who seek to save their lives will lose them, and those who lose them, who give them away, will gain them. What have we given up? Not what have we achieved? Serving another over the self is not necessarily a Christmas theme, but it is, I would argue, the central theme of Christianity. And this act of sacrifice in the name of saving others or helping others is, I think, deeply resonant with our faith. So in that sense, I think it bears some mentioning. Judgment, dreams, sacrifice, that mix of light and dark. And now I want to talk a little bit about money. Because money is one of those through lines in this whole film. Not having enough of it, having opportunities to get it, how to spend it, how to use it. And you saw a little bit of it here. Jamie, I'm going to skip the next clip just for time purposes, so we're going to move to the last one in a few minutes. But the clip I was going to show is that one early in George's life, just after his dad has died. Potter makes a move on the building and loan, and George stands up to him and says, "No way, we're not going to do that." And it's very clear they have different philosophies of business. Right? One there to make money, to use people as means, not ends. And George very much saying, "Oh, you don't need to sign that. I know you're good for it. You can check in with me, or I know you." The relationship is primary. And he's willing to run his business that way. Now, it's not a terribly successful business. but it is, I think, the end of the movie arguing, a very successful life. This sense of money, of gifts, of elaborate, extravagant, almost reckless use of our money and our gifts is, I think, a Christmas and perhaps even more Epiphany theme. When those wise men show up with those ridiculous gifts for a baby, they're bringing something that is over the top, that honors him as the king and the priest and the prophet that he is. So that becomes a theme of this season as well. And then we give each other gifts this time of year, right? We honor relationships by spending money or time on another person, people particularly that we care about. So George is described by Potter dismissively as sort of a starry-eyed dreamer. Is that evocative, that phrase, for this time of year? A starry-eyed dreamer who values generosity over good business sense. And then there is that scene of temptation, too, where another time in which the building and loan is getting ready to close. He's down on his luck, and Potter plays most effectively, if you remember, on his broken dreams. It really is a temptation moment. The same way that in the wilderness, Jesus is tempted by Satan with all those things and say, oh, you could be so great. You could have gotten out of here. You could now make as much money and you can have, all the pretty clothes, go on trips to Europe and New York and all that stuff. But he rejects him. He has a moment where he says, oh, God, that'd be great. But then it rejects him because it is not in his character to prioritize money over people. And as I pointed out on the wall, there's a phrase. It's not quite a scripture passage, but it's close. You can only take with you that which you have given away. So what is important for how we use our money? But then, of course, it is the literal loss of money when Uncle Billy goes and stupidly loses the $8,000 deposit, right, that is the rest of their money that needs to go into the bank, that drives George to despair. You can see this through line in his life. So he's had enough, but not too much. He's been clear. He's been quick to give it away. And he crawls back to Potter. He's ridiculed. He's rejected. And that's when this idea where it says you're worth more dead than alive comes in. And this brings in the idea of his death being a valuable act monetarily. And George saying, having this idea, you're worth more dead than alive. So those questions come into this whole question of how we are living our faith in this sense of sacrificing our own needs above others. Now, primarily, George is living in such a way that is relationship-driven. It is relational. And that is ultimately how he decides to use his money. But the problem is he's having trouble receiving the gifts that he so freely and easily gives. Wish I'd never been born, he says, after he saves Clarence from jumping in the river. And this is then the turn of the movie. We have that magical moment where he is not born, and so he's shown the way in which everyone's life is worse for him not being in it. And that the relationships that matter most and ultimately are small, not big. It's his friends, it's his family, it's the immediate relationship, and very often money is not what matters, but money is a means to that relationship. And that, I would say, is the purpose of the gifts we give at Christmas, to honor the relationship. No man is a failure who has friends. That's what Clarence writes in the book that he leaves him at the end of the movie. And so these radiating acts of kindness and love shining out like a light shining out of a stable on a dark night or a star in the sky, this is the measure of one's life and what makes it meaningful. And there would allow George to go from, I wish I'd never been born, to I want to live again. And that is, in the last third of the movie, the important transition that he makes from darkness into light. And so I want to show that final scene. We're going to push our time here a little bit, but we're going to show that final scene where he goes back to the bridge, having now seen what his life looks like without him in it, and getting that into that place of darkness and into light. So this famous final scene. Jamie, why don't you go ahead? And I may stop us in the middle or so.
back. I don't care what happens to me. Get me back to my wife and kids. Help me, Clarence, please. Please. I want to live again. I want to live again. I want to live again. Please, God, let me live again. Hey, George! George! You all right? Hey, what's the matter? Now get out of here, Bert, or I'll hit you again. Get out of here. What the Sam Hill you yelling for, George? George? Bert, you know me? Know you? You kidding? I've been looking all over town trying to find you. I saw your car piled into that tree down there, and I thought maybe hey, your mouth's bleeding. Are you sure you're all right? What you... My mouth's bleeding, Bert! My mouth's bleeding! Zoozoo pedals! Zoozoo! There they are! Bert! What do you know about that? Merry Christmas! Well, Merry Christmas! Merry! Merry! Yay! Yay! Hello, Bedford Park! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, George! Merry Christmas, movie house! Merry Christmas, Emporium! Merry Christmas, you wonderful Billy Alone! Hey! Merry Christmas, Mr. Potter! Happy New Year to you! In jail! Go on home, they're waiting for you. Well, hello, Mr. Bank Examiner. Hi, Mr. Bailey, there's a deficit. I know, $8,000.
Got a little paper.
I'll bet it's a warrant for my arrest. Isn't it wonderful? I'm going to jail. Merry Christmas, reporter. Where's Mary? Mary? Oh, look at this wonderful old drafty house. Mary! 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 Have you seen my wife? Mary? Kids! Hey! Oh. Kids, Jenny, Tommy. Oh, I could eat you up. Where's your mother?
We're looking for you. Dr. Billy. Daddy!
Suzu, my little ginger snap. How do you feel?
Fine. Not a smidge of temper.
Not a smidge of... Hallelujah.
Hello? George! George, darling, where? George, stop! Where? Oh, George, George,
Are you real?
George,
You have no idea what's happened to me.
you have no idea what happened. Come on, George, come on downstairs. Quick, get on your way, George. Come on. I'm going in here now. Now you stand right over here by the tree. Right there. Don't move. Don't move. What's happening? Oh, there's nothing coming out. George, it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
Who's that? Come, Daddy. Come, Daddy.
Come in, Uncle Billy. Everybody. Here.
George!
Very good, George, very good. She told some people you were in trouble with it. They scattered all over town collecting money. Didn't ask any questions, just said George in trouble and tell me what so anything like it's red like that.
Here, George, Merry Christmas.
Don't push. There we are. The line farms on the right. Line farms on the left.
I'm coming, George.
All right, Jamie, I'm going to ask you to stop it there. If you want to see the end and sing along, you're going to have to watch it yourself in this month that is to come. But you see how it, all of a sudden, again, relationship is primary and the money just becomes secondary. It's just tumbling literally all over the table. And George has had a life that is committed to that, and he finally gets paid back in the sense of people being able to express that back to him, and he's finally in a place where he can receive it and see it. And those little blessings, those small relationships become paramount. So it makes me wonder then, again, to ask that question, is this a Christmas movie? Questions of existence and non-existence, of what matters truly. It's a serious movie. Small things that matter, big consequences, no greater gift than the gift of life, all true. And a triumph, I think, of the common man in the face of existential oblivion. That's all very powerful, but is that a Christmas theme? I think one of the reasons this movie resonates is, beautifully acted, it's wonderfully done. But I think people resonate with the fact that life has a way of beating the dream out of us sometimes. And perhaps not beating the dream out of us, but reshaping the dream, such that we come to discover, I hope, that a life of meaning requires commitment and sacrifice, going deep, not going wide, and relinquishing all the things you could be doing for the thing that you are doing. To be rooted in a time and a place, and to find there, in a specific place, with specific people, joy, happiness, peace, fulfillment. All those things that are indicative of the place where God dwells when God is with us. And I would say this movie is about a triumph of that truth. And so is a Christmas movie, because Christmas is important not just for what it was, the birth of Jesus, but for what it is, a time to give and to love and to sing and to celebrate and acknowledge and be aware that God is here, present, now, incarnate in flesh and blood, in love and in life. And that a God who walks this earth, that in walking this earth, we glean something of the God who walks this earth with us. The God to whom we owe our life, yes, but also through whom our experiences and our sacrifices, through our humanity, we come to know. A God who is known through humanity, not divorced or apart from humanity, that is a Christmas God. A God who is real in flesh and blood. Not by transcending our humanity do we know this God, but by going deeper into it. That is the essence of the incarnation. And that is the message of Christmas, that God can be and is found in the midst of our lives, redeeming them from their failure and their frustrations, and showing them to be beautiful and blessed and all in all wonderful. So that's all I have today, and I've taken you a few minutes over time. But that's what we're hoping to do with some of these stories, okay? Pull out these themes: light and darkness, judgment, sacrifice, dreams, and ultimately relationships that teach us how a life has meaning and what makes it wonderful. And if we can see that, then we will have had a truly transformative Advent and Christmas. So we don't have any time for questions, I'm sorry, but if you want to talk more, you can catch me after the service. But thank you guys very much for coming and being a part of that today. It's good to have you with us.